In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a new classroom with Handle, how to add instructors, how to add learners, and how to tweak some of the settings to get you ready for teaching. Okay, let's kick off by creating a new classroom. So you can see the dialog here. So all I'm going to do is choose a classroom name. So I think I'm going to call this class Handle Test. And I hit the Create Classroom button. And you can see that the classroom appears. Now, at the moment, this isn't going to be available for any of the other instructors or any learners. So the next stage is to add some instructors and learners. The way we do this is not by clicking on the big gray square, but by clicking on the settings wheel here. So once I've done that, it takes me through to this settings page. And if we scroll down a little, you can see the add remove instructors settings. And a couple of things to point out here. So my user profile at the moment is George Handle. And you can see because I created the classroom, I've automatically been added to it as a convener. Now I can turn this on and off, but I would be cautious about this for yourself because the convener role allows you to change the settings of the classroom and start and stop the class, add micro sessions and other elements and so on. So you really want to leave yourself as a convener once you've created your classroom, because that will allow you to continue using and adjusting it. I'm going to add some other instructors though. I'm going to add Joe Hayden and I'm going to add Jess Bach. Now, these instructors by default are not conveners. That means they're not going to be able to start and stop the class. They're not going to be able to add or remove classroom elements, and they're not going to be able to delete the classroom itself. So I think actually I'm co-teaching with Jess Bach. So I'm going to allow Jess Bach to be a convener as well so that they have those privileges. Joe, on the other hand, is just an assistant, and so I don't want them to have that, so I'm going to leave them in the current state. Okay, now that's my instructors sorted, and if they log in, they'll be able to see my class on their homepage and access it as well. So now I want to add the learners. This is a little bit more complicated. We have to create what's called a CSV file, or comma separated values file. Now I've got one ready to go and I'm going to talk you through this. So you need to have this first line which has username, first name, surname, email and role, and each of these are separated by a comma. And then underneath we need to fill in the fields for each student by following this format. So we need a username, a first name, surname, an email, and the role is always learner. Now there's a couple of things to point out here. The username needs to be unique for each learner, as should the email be as well. Although this is an example, so all the learners have the same email. One tip for choosing a username is just to use this first part of the email without the @ symbol, because for a given institution, those tend to be unique. So now that I've got that, I'm ready to go. So what I'm going to do is go back to my settings page and I'm going to click the choose file button and select my CSV and then open it. And this brings up this dialog. And if everything is highlighted green, it's showing you that all of these students are ready to be imported. They might, however, be highlighted red. Things will be highlighted red because perhaps you've got an incorrectly formatted email, or the username is not unique, or there's some other kind of problem. In that case, you'll see what's wrong in the error bar here, and you can go back to your CSV and fix it. But in this case, everything is correct, so I'm going to hit continue and add the learners to the classroom. And there we go. We can see that all the learners have now been successfully added. If I change my mind, I can remove any of them at any time. The one more thing I would say about this learner CSV file is I'm editing it here in a text editor. You might find that a bit cumbersome. So you can use a spreadsheet editor such as Excel. You just need to make sure that you export the file as a CSV when you're done. Okay, let's just take a quick look at some of the settings that are available here, and I'll explain them. So one set of settings that are important are the defaults. And this is how your class will be when you hit the start button. So here you can allow questions or you can toggle them off. So this means that if you start the class with it toggled off, the students won't be able to ask any questions until you allow it. The same goes for study groups. The students won't be able to form their own study groups unless you subsequently allow it. And this one about questions sharing allows students to see each other's questions. So if you turn this off, students' questions are hidden from each other when they post them. So those are those settings. Here we have a bunch of settings. I'm not going to show all of them to you. I'll work through some of these numbers though and explain what they mean. So you might want your learners only to be able to ask one question at a time. So this is what this setting does. So this means that once they've posted a question, they can't post another one until that question has been answered. I find this really useful for very large classes where you've got more than 100 learners in a class. It stops the instructors getting swamped with questions. However, if you're in a much smaller class, you might want to allow students to ask several questions at a time. This number here is the maximum number of study groups a learner can join at a time. So far I find that the sensible setting here is 1, but it might be that you have a specific situation where you want them to be able to follow multiple study groups at the same time. The next box is how many people can follow a question, and this ends up resulting in how many people are on a video call when an instructor answers that question. So I've set it at 5. I feel like that's a reasonable number, but you might want it higher or lower depending on how your class is run. The final one is how many learners can follow a study group. So I've set this at 5. So this means that the maximum number of learners in a study group is going to be 5. But for example, you might have a class where you want students to work solely in pairs. So then you might reduce this number down to 2, and that would happen. Okay, so we're pretty much good to go. And so I'm going to just show you now how we go to the main classroom dashboard. So I'm going to click the home button and we can see our class here. And instead of clicking on this settings wheel, I'm just going to hit the big grey square instead. And that brings me to the classroom dashboard. Okay, that's it for now. Good luck with setting up your class.